So what are we going to do today? I'm going to recap briefly the 5 steps of GTD. I'm going to focus on 2 of my favorite steps. I think oh, that's a typo. It's inbox and review. But 2 of the 5 steps are total game changers. Review in particular is one that is underappreciated by the broader productivity community. And then we're gonna build together. This is kind of like what I do in my course. I fire up a blank Notion screen. I show you how it's done. You watch the replay. It's going to go a little bit fast in the spirit of just staying on schedule, but you can rewatch the replay, kind of go through it yourself, and hopefully you'll have a similar system tweaked to your own parameters by the end, then a Q&A at the very end. The ultimate goal, there's a phrase, an Eastern phrase, an ancient Eastern phrase called Wu Wei, which is effortless action. And that to me has been the magic of GTD. I bought the book in 2004, so I basically used the strategy for my entire professional career. And to put it in context, I walked to a bookstore and bought the book in Barnes and Nobles in 2003 before Google really existed in earnest. But effortless action, in martial arts, they might call it mind like water. It's like kind of using your own momentum to kind of to spar and to do jujitsu. In rowing, there's I think they call it the swing, which is when like all 5 rowers are at the same time and you're harnessing the momentum. So my goal for you is to find a system, design a system where you can really capitalize on effortless action, which is doing less and getting more. I'm particularly keen to help you guys with this pesky part of our lives, which is the important and not urgent. So that could be like your relationships, that could be your personal finances, that could be your health. These are parts of your life that it's hard to make a task out of them. Like, yes, in theory, you could say like, go to the gym every day and like have a reminder pop up. But the reality is that that's not how it works. That's not how those like sleeping more, meditation. They're not tasks. They are parts of your life that are important, but not urgent because they don't have a fixed deadline. And these are the particularly sneaky tasks in our lives because you can hit snooze, 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 snooze. And a year later, you realize that you haven't had an emotionally intimate conversation with your spouse. I've been there. So that is what I teach, and what I would love to help you design is a system to do that. So let me just check. I'm getting a few notices of a weak internet connection. Got it. Okay, cool. We are good. Let me just... If my internet starts to break up, just barge into the chat and let me know. And let's see, everything good. All right, cool. And then lastly, I'm a big believer in just trying to close this chat window. Sorry, a lot going on. I'm a big believer in being a fast tortoise, which is, small incremental action over long periods of time. And hopefully having a system that can support being a fast tortoise was how you yield compounding gains over many, many years and decades. For me, that's what GTD has done. Again, I'm 41 and I've been using it since I was 22. So without any further ado, let's just look at this timeless classic. If you haven't read it, I highly, highly, highly recommend you read it. It's 5 steps and they go as follows: capture, clarify, organize, review, and engage. So capture is quite simple. If you're on this call, there's a chance that your mind's always racing. It's ideas, 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 ideas. You have an idea, you want to call someone, you want to do something, you have a business idea, you want to tweak something in your workflow. And the simple thing is that, David Allen says, your head is made for having ideas, not holding them. And so he is very keen on, as soon as some idea hits, it's got to get out of your head because you're carrying a little tax, a little mental load every time you try to juggle multiple ideas in your head. So what do people do? They write it in a notebook. they email themselves. They might have Todoist or Things 3. They might have Notion. What he really, really encourages is to capture everything into one inbox or two inboxes. What I teach my clients is do two inbox. Do an analog inbox, because you always have like a pen and a piece of paper, and then do a digital inbox. And so that would be kind of unifying your capture. However, once you capture, you then need to clarify. So when I look at a lot of my clients' lists, they have things like mom or taxes or laptop. Like, that's not a task. Like, mom is not a task. Call mom might be a task, or send mom flowers for her birthday might be a task, or taxes are not a task. Tasks might be broken up into different subtasks. So clarify is actually unrelated to any specific tool. It is to actually narrowly define a task. And a very simple way to do this is to start every task with a verb. That's a very, very simple way. That way, mom is not a task, but call mom becomes a task. Taxes aren't a task. File taxes, collect W-2s become a task. So that is the clarify phase. Next is organize, step 3. This is where GTD goes a little bit more extreme than most standard task management. GTD, they call them contexts, but you basically add metadata to your tasks. So the most obvious place you add metadata is you put a task on a project. So again, taxes might be a project, and within taxes, you have gather your W-2s, input the data into TurboTax, collect your receipts, file your taxes, and check to see if the funds hit. So those would be 8 tasks. You notice they all started with verbs, and they would roll up into a project called file your taxes. So projects is the most common metadata that's used across all task management systems. Due dates is another one. Prioritization would be another thing, like high, medium, low. GTD is actually very against prioritization for reasons we'll show you after, or speak about after. But again, that's your standard task management fare. Then there's something that's more nuanced, which is called contexts. Contexts are, now pay attention here, person, place, or thing. Now, contexts are basically tags for your tasks. So person, place, or thing. Let's say that you have a boss. Your boss might be a context. So you probably have in your workday 5 work projects each with 10 tasks. So you might have 50 tasks for in your work, and 9 of them might be associated to your boss. So you would tag those 9 tasks as with your boss. That would be the context. Another example could be place. A place could be home, office are some obvious ones, or maybe a grocery store. And so again, I might have a bunch of tasks. Let's take home. I could have a task that's water the garden. I could have a task that could be install new webcam, which might be related to my work. I could have a task that could say organize, get my paper receipts for my taxes. Those are all tags that fall under a place. And so again, you could tag the tasks. They lift up across their metadata, so they span all your different projects. And so that's another unique GTD tag. I won't go into every single detail, but another one that I like to use for tags is energy states: low energy, high energy. I am a big believer in working in energy states. So I'm like a morning person, so my best energy is up until right now. Well, let's just say 2:30, just so I have my best energy for this call. But my best energy is in the morning, my worst energy is in the afternoon. So I will tag across all dimensions of my life low energy tasks, pay this bill, call this person, file this, blah, blah, blah. That way I know that when 3 o'clock hits, I just click all my low energy tasks. They might be for work, they might be for personal, they might be for my side projects, and I could just start banging away at those. That's the metadata. Those are the contexts in GTD. The fourth one is where the magic happens. And I tell you, whenever I explain this to people, they're like, this is the biggest breakthrough, the review function. And this is what catches that really difficult dimension in your life, important but not urgent. I always give an example about the review. And the example that I give is your bucket list, right? So the bucket list is, what are some things you want to do in your lifetime? Right? So I'll give you a few of mine. Like, I want to surf in South Africa. I would like to go to the NBA Finals. I would like to, I don't know, what's another one? I would like to live in Sri Lanka for a little while. I might want to buy a surf shack. I'm a surfer, so a lot of my things will revolve around surfing. So those are 4 or 5 things. Now, what do you do with those things? Well, you would put them on a list that's called bucket list. But here's the issue with that, is that how do you remember to check on them? Like, how do you, like, I can't put a due date, like buy a surf shack in Sri Lanka for, like 4 years from now. Like, there's no point in that. But I don't want to just put it in some list and never ever look at it, right? Because I want to make some kind of forward progress towards this. Bucket list is extreme, but like an example that could be relevant to today would be develop a new skill, or change industries, or reinvent myself, right? These are like 1, 2, 3 year type projects that it would be so arbitrary to say, like, okay, by December 15th, 2020, I want to learn Python. Like, that it's just not how we work, right? That if you put deadlines on things that don't have deadlines stop being relevant, right? You've kind of taken away the impact of having a deadline. Pay my rent by the end of the month. That is a deadline. That is a firm task. Learn how to use Python. There's no deadline for that, but you still want to have a way to keep bringing that into your perspective. And so what GTD does, and I don't see this in any other system, even Things 3, which is the most popular GTD app, or maybe second most popular, it doesn't even have like a dedicated review function. The only place that has a dedicated review is OmniFocus, which is a Mac app, or apps like Notion where you build it yourself. So what you basically do is you would take, like, let's say I have reinvent myself would be one of my lists, and bucket list would be another one. So my reinvention project, that could have a monthly review. And what that would do is every month it would pull all those tasks back into like a dashboard and say, hey, Kay, where are you on learning Python? And then you would, learning Python's a little, it wouldn't pass the clarify bucket, but it might be take module 1 of Codecademy Python course. That might be, and again, you wouldn't put a deadline on that. So you would resurface that in. Maybe every 6 months, it resurfaces, buy a surf shack in Sri Lanka. And again, I don't really need to be thinking about that every day, but I also don't want to never think about that, because it will never happen if I don't. So the review function lets you toe that line between things that you want to move forward, but they don't have the hard deadline, the forcing function to inch them forward. So super important, and I'll show you how that works. And the last step is engage, which is, it's basically like calibrating the tasks that you want to do with the current state that you're in. So the low energy, high energy example was a good one. But you could have different perspectives, like tell me all my tasks that are due in the next week. That's, again, is more of your standard to-do list fare. So I would say like the big differences of GTD are capture, like really getting your capture super tight. That's one of your homeworks for today. Think about 2 capture sources, one analog, one digital. And then the second is review. How are you resurfacing those longer tasks, projects, goals into your everyday life? So now let's go build it. I'm always like, I refer to you all as Notion ninjas. So this is our spirit animal over here. So I'm going to drop in and I'm going to share my screen, my Notion screen. And okay, so give me a thumbs up if you could see my Notion screen. Awesome. So what we're gonna do, so this is what is so cool, but what's so tricky about Notion is that what I'm gonna show you is actually a database. And I know we probably have all different levels of Notion here. We have people who probably are really good at it, and we have people that have never opened the app. So I'm gonna try to find that right balance between the two. But the coolest thing about Notion is that it lets you could build stuff without any programming. You just need to be like decent at like spreadsheets. You can build stuff. It looks super good and it's super duper customizable. The main thing about Notion is, well, there's a lot of different things, but it has tables, which are basically like spreadsheets, but it has tables that can take all different types of variables. So like a spreadsheet can take like a number, formula, or a piece of text. And I guess Google Sheets does checkboxes now, but Notion can do text, numbers, single tags, multi-tags, dates, people, upload files, checkboxes, and then there's all these advanced ones for like different database functionality. And so you can do tables, and then you can also link tables together to create databases. And so if you, what's a good example of, you know, like Spotify, it would be a database, right? Because you have a list of artists, the artist has a list of albums, and the albums has a list of songs. And so you could connect those two together so that you could link Kanye West to My Dark Twisted Fantasy to Monster, right? And you wouldn't have to retype Kanye West like if it was just in a flat two-dimensional spreadsheet. So, and I saw that the chat was hit, but I'm gonna just, I'm in a good flow right now, so I'm gonna just keep going with this. A lot of people are gonna be watching this on replay too. We had 375 people who RSVP'd to this, which is incredible. So here is your first table. Think about this as a spreadsheet. This is step 1, capture, and you just dump tasks into this. So, you know, I gave you some of these tasks here, but you know, I could do something even more simple. I can add a few just so you could get the hang of it. I've actually been wanting to buy the book called The One Thing, which is like another productivity book. Buy The One Thing book. You see, they all start with verbs, by the way. Another homework for you. Always start your task with verbs. Always, always, always. So buy The One Thing book and review homework packet. What else? Check in on JetBlue refund. Okay. So simple table, simple tasks. I made it look all pretty. Another nice thing about design of Notion is that it really embraces like good design. These are like custom icon sets, things that I've built myself, a little branding on my course. So I added a bunch of tasks. So let's add a few columns. So actually I'll delete this just so you can see the process of adding columns. So the first column for any to-do list is the thing done. Done. And it's a checkbox. The next thing in any to-do list, due date. Again, we're in your standard fare of a to-do list. Due date. All right. The next thing that we talked about, Notion, GTD lets you have one prioritization flag. So it's an actual flag, which is basically like high priority. and this will be a checkbox, another checkbox, flag. Okay, see, we can check things. Then we'll do context. This will be a multi-select. So this is multiple tags. So again, we said person, place, thing, or energy state. So I'm gonna add just a few. My boss, not my boo. That could be a good tag too. My boss, home, work, high energy, low energy. Okay, and I'm just gonna clean up. I'm so peculiar about formatting and how things look visually. I'll just clean that up. So this is what I just did was define my list of tags. And again, if you know Notion, you're quite familiar with what I just did. Okay, so those are contexts. What else does, what else could we add? Oh, we could add duration. That's not a super useful tag, but people like to use that. So you could sort by your estimated duration, and that would be a number type. So right there, you have a bunch of different ways that you can set up just the tasks. Clearly, we're missing something here, which is projects, right? The project would be the main, think your to-do list, like these are my work tasks, these are my personal tasks, these are my finance tasks. We're gonna do that, it's gonna be in a different table. So I might just put in like a few, just like a little bit of data, just so that we can play with this, and it can look a little, I'll throw in a context, oops, home, duration, work, okay. So got a few things here. And let's just say that, cancel chase card was done, and, check in on JetBlue was done. Now, think about what I just showed you here is an inbox, right? This is your dumping ground for tasks. We could talk about the speed issue. Let's save that for the Q&A if anyone has questions about speed, because if you're like a speed freak for especially for mobile, you might run into some issues here. So there's some workarounds. But let me just show you a few little things that you could do just within this table view. Again, if you know Notion, it's going to be pretty familiar to you. But the one obvious thing we would do is we would filter out any task that is marked done. Because like, all right, if it's done, like there's no point in really seeing it anymore. So we would select the column done is not checked. So that just knocked off all of our checklists. So if I check this one off, it's gone. Undo that. So that's how you use the filter. So again, here is your inbox. You're capturing everything. Here's your clarify, because you're listing everything with verbs. And here's your metadata: due dates, flags, context, duration. That's how quickly we just went through, 2 of the 5 steps of GTD. Now, the key thing though is like, where are our projects, right? We need our projects. So let me flip in. So projects will be the second table that we do. And I started that one just because it's a little bit trickier. Okay, so I started, these are my projects: my finances, my bucket list, single action list. Single action would be like a catch-all for things that don't fall into your other projects. Now, when you are building this on your own, you could add your own project. So I see like Sean, Tarek, and Rodrigo and Jared in front of me on my Zoom. But Tarek might be a graphic designer, or he might be looking for a freelance gig. So it could be, one of his could be identify new freelance gigs. So you can just add projects using this button or this button, just like you can add tasks by using this button or this button. So I'm going to go back into my projects. Ignore all this data here. Just imagine you just had one column, and so these are the 4 projects that you have. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back into my tasks. I'm going to add a new column. This is, if you've never created a database, it's like such a delightful feeling, like creating your first database. You go in and you go to advanced. See, you guys just started. We're 30 minutes into it. You're already in advanced fields. You type in you click on relation, and it's going to ask you. It's going to say, which database do you want to link to? So I click on it, and I know that it's called GTD projects. So it pulled up this thing. Let me rename it. Link to projects. So, I'm linking to projects right now, and look at that. Let me just show you what I did again. I just clicked on this empty cell, and it pulled up all of my projects, my bucket list, my finances, my single action list, and Tarek's. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, please yell at me. So look at these projects. They just showed up here. How magical is that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and assign, okay, renew auto lease, my finances. And so I'm actually going to do a quick thing. This is how inboxes work in GTD. Once you put something in a project, it disappears from your inbox because you've added the right metadata. So watch this new filter. I'm going to add another filter. If projects is not empty, right? I assigned it something. I assigned renew auto lease to my finances. Oops, is empty. If it's empty, show it. So watch. Gather W-2s, my finances, gone. Surf in South Africa, my bucket list, gone. Review homework packet with my daughter, single action list. I would have like a family one, but not for this example. Buy the one thing book, single action list. Boom, I'm in task 0, inbox 0 on my tasks. And so the way most people use GTD is that they'll be adding to their inboxes throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, I used to do this on my subway ride home when I lived in New York. They put everything, they go to inbox 0. Doesn't mean your tasks are gone. They just have been tagged with a project. So that is, so that will show you how projects get linked to tasks. And so we've done the 3 phases of GTD, right? We've done capture, we've done clarify, and we've done organize, which now gets us to review. But I know you're probably thinking to yourself, like, wait a minute, where'd all my tasks go? Like, what if I need to see my tasks? What if I need to see what's due soon? Like, they can't just disappear like that. What the F? So the beauty of GTD and the beauty of Notion is because we have all this metadata, we can then go and create whatever view we want for ourselves. So let's go in to a GTD dashboard. I'm just going to hide this for now. Actually, I'm going to be ballsy and delete it. So now that we have a database, which again is 2 linked tables, we can basically access it many ways through many different views. So we have this giant database with all these tasks. Some are done, some are personal, some have due dates, some have flags, some have contacts. But we just want to see a little kernel, a subset of them. Notion lets you create this little lens into a subset of tasks using what I call the 3 most beautiful words of Notion: create linked database. You guys are learning a lot for you. If this is your first Notion course, you're either overwhelmed or jumping with joy, because this is quite dense. This is like week 3 of my course, and we're in minute 34. So what you'll do is you'll add a new block. Let me show you the regular way. You hit plus, and you do create linked database. And then it lets you pull in any database that you have in your workspace. So I'm going to pull in GTD tasks. Dun, da, 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 all my tasks are here. Now I can customize the crap out of this. So let's say I want to do a view that's like due soon. Actually, let's make it easier. Has due date. So again, here are all my tasks, even the ones that are done. What I will do is I will just narrow the data. Again, I'm not deleting anything or changing anything, but I'm just narrowing it to the things that are important to me. So if I'm looking at due dates only, I only want to see, I want the done box, I want the due date. I don't care about anything else. So I'm just hiding them from my view. All right. So now I have a subset of my tasks, and I'm going to filter it even more. And I'm going to say, once again, I never want to see something that's done. So just get those out of the way and only show me things where due date is not empty. So these two tasks have due dates. My example was not good because I wouldn't put surf in South Africa as a due date, but you get what I mean. We could do that again. Actually, just copy it to make it easier. Copy this. And the next one would be has a flag. And again, you could do whatever you want, like however your workflow has a flag, and then we just need to change our filters. So we always will eliminate things that are done. And flag, you guys are blocking my flag is checked. So, and then just to show you what happened, I can just show more data, right? Gather W-2s had a flag. And so you can just keep creating different views on how, you could say, work related and high end flag. Duplicate that view. And again, go into the filters. And so instead of this, we would say, and our context contains work. There's none. So you get the drill, right? We had this master inbox, and now we are slicing and dicing different perspectives to shape it accordingly. So the last thing I'm going to show is the review. I'm going to drill into I didn't realize there were 10 chat questions. So okay, I will come back. I will come back to some of these. I will hit all the questions. I wanted to make sure that the people watching on replay could see this without interruption. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this review function. This is the thing where people were like, oh my God, you can do this in Notion, or you could create this. So I'm back in my projects page, and I did this before because it's a little bit of extra work. I've created something called review frequency, which is weekly, quarterly, monthly. And what I do then, I use a formula. Now, this is beyond the scope of this webinar to show you all the details, but I just want you to see what's possible. I created a formula that basically says, if it's monthly, convert it to 30. If it's weekly, convert it to 7. If it's quarterly, convert it to 90. Now, here we have a date, which is a manual input, which is when was the last time I reviewed this? So last time I reviewed my finances was March 11th. And I would like to review them weekly, which is every 7 days. So my next review is 11 plus 7, right? Or March 11 plus 7 days, which again is a formula. It's similar to an Excel formula. It's maybe a little bit more complicated. Then I do a test. So today is March 26th. So I am 8 days overdue on my review of my finances. So what that means, so I tested this by basically comparing this column, next review, with today's date. So today's date is after greater than March 18th. So this project is overdue, and then I need to go look at it. So this is how you get the review function going. And so for the last part of the demo, what I'll show you is, let's do it on top, is that you can then create your own review function, needs review. Again, we'll create a linked database. This time we'll just pull it into GTD projects. So it pulls up all of our projects, right? Bucket list, finances, freelance gigs. And then we're gonna filter it. We'll just clean it up to just show last review, next review, overdue. So you could see view days, right? Well, these are the links to all the related tasks. Okay, so once again, we go in and we just say, I only want to see the projects that are overdue. And so I'll do a filter, once again, that says only show me tasks where overdue is checked. And so then let's say I reviewed my finances because it's overdue. Renew auto lease, I can go in and see all the tasks. Renew auto lease, gather W-2s. Okay, cool. And then I will mark this as today. So today is the 26th. Watch what happens when I click the 26th. It no longer requires a review. And in 7 days, it will pop up again in my needs review section. So again, I have reviews on things ranging from like every 3 days, like when I'm in like a near-term project, to every 6 months, 8 months, like, you know, bucket list type stuff, long-term goals. And they keep getting resurfaced so that I just remember, I have to acknowledge that I thought about that thing and thought about the tasks within that category. So with that, we flew through. This is like years worth of GTD knowledge and a couple of years worth of Notion expertise. So the point was not for you to get this. The point was not for you to get every single detail, but to really understand what you're capable of. I'm going to send you a follow-up email that has like a lot more tutorials and things like that. And again, this is early. I just want you to understand the power of GTD, like what makes it unique. So that is the inbox and the review. And whether it's Notion or anything else, just remember those two things. So that would be the first thing that I would recommend to you. And if you are going to start to use this in Notion, I would just start with the basics of like learning how to use tables and learning how to use tables and filters and sorts. And that would get you, a large part of the way. And then as you got familiar with tables, you can start linking them into databases and make some of these more advanced things. So with that, there's a lot in the chat, but maybe I'll just open it up to verbal questions, and then I'll fly through the chat, just because verbal in person is more fun. So unmute yourself, show your video, show your face, say hi, and who's got a question? Wow, you guys like to chat that much? All right, I'll go through the chat. Okay, had to leave. Can you show how to create from scratch if you've never used Notion? Is this better to use than Evernote? I will answer the Evernote question first. I think it depends. I'm against uh, productivity tribalism. I don't like. I know what I like, but I don't bash other people's tools. Um, Evernote has Evernote. You can't really do tables, so that would be a big one. Evernote is also just not very pretty to like. If you get inspired by being in like a clean UI, Evernote fails at that. But Evernote's been around forever. Its search is much better. It's way faster. Its mobile app is faster. It integrates with IFTTT. It has better integrations. So that's the trade-off. You can search PDFs in Evernote. Notion doesn't work well with PDFs. So that's really the trade-off. I think if you really were to distill a difference between the two, it's how badly do you want tables? Like you couldn't do this. Well, you probably could, but it would be a lot more manual to do what I just showed you in Evernote. Let's see. How to create a table from scratch. I'll do that when I reopen Notion. Not sure how, just to add if you maintain, yeah, okay, databases, overwhelmed, just please come back, yes. It's, do not, like, again, this is a tutorial to show you what's possible. And you can watch, I recommend you, depending on your level, like re-watch it, like by pausing across the increments and trying it alongside. And when you get stuck, going into like deep diving on those specific parts, which would probably be tables for most of you. Do you have a video on formulas? I do. I will include that in the notes. Yeah, you said. Oh, GTD is against prioritization. This is a really important point. GTD is against two things: prioritization and due dates. GTD is very adamant that unless something has a serious repercussion for not being done by a certain date, it should not have a due date. And the reason why is if you put due dates on everything, you've lost the power of due dates. And so, and the same thing with prioritization. It's almost too binary for GTD. And so what GTD would say is, this is why we give you context. This is why we give you context plus review. Because the combination of those two, if done appropriately, will always be able to surface up the right set of activities for the right point in time. That's why it would be against prioritization. The way you would prioritize with GTD would be to tighten your review function, right? So if I'm like, when I'm in my Notion course, the review function is daily. So every day, which basically is like everything's due each day. So every day it pulls things back. But when I get out of that mode, I shift it to like 30 or 20 or like 15. So that is why GTD is against prioritization. You could also think of the way I talk about GTD with my clients is that GTD is like a Zamboni. It just like sweeps all your tasks into you and like puts them in your face at a frequency that you determine. So nothing can fall through the cracks if your review is set up properly. This is why people get so scared of GTD, because you have to commit to a review or else you're going to be constantly terrified that you're missing something. But I'm never scared of missing something because I'm always reviewing every day. And it's the different frequencies are coming in. So you also mentioned capturing analog as well as digital. To what extent do we do that without duplicating? I think, I mean, it's a good question. Like, do you need analog? I'm of the perspective that you do, because there are actually moments when you don't have your phone. And I do, especially if you're even a remote visual thinker, like you just like to write stuff down. And so so like I don't, for example, most people don't take notes like in meetings and stuff on laptops. That's still quite rare, at least when I was in the corporate world. So you have a notebook, right? So if the task comes up in a meeting, you're not going to like whip out your iPhone and put in the task. Maybe you can, but that would be why I'm not like adamant that you need an analog, but I think that analog still plays enough of a role. I mean, maybe you could think about it as having like a primary versus secondary mode. Probably outside, but how do you think estimating the time it takes you to take a task how do you estimate the time that it takes a task? I kind of wing it. I don't use duration, but I do try to keep tasks under an hour. And so like I'm a big believer that you get a lot of momentum by like cycling through, by like tight, it's that clarify stage 2, like by really having tight tasks that you can kind of like move through things quite quickly. But again, I think that happens, that probably is like that depends on your personality. I'll get to you, Evan, in 1 second. Have you looked at Para and you compare the two methods? I think Notion can do either. So I teach, who asked that? Jonathan, I teach like a hybrid of Para and GTD in the course. So I think for those of you who don't know Para, it's a way to delineate, like it's a little bit beyond the scope of this, but it's a way to delineate things that are projects, areas which are kind of like, they're kind of actionable, like being healthy would be an area. A project would be submit this RFP. And then the R is like resources, which is information management. It's like data that I'm collecting. So I actually teach Para in the course as like the organizing principle for your information. And then I bake in the review function into every part of Para. Oh yeah, Jonathan, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I've just been looking at both of them alongside one another. So I appreciate the difference there. Just
awesome. I have a long video on how I use Para in GTD. I'm in Para and in Notion on YouTube. If you just do like Para Notion, it will come up, and I'll try to add that to the notes. Evan, what's up?
Okay, can you give more examples on how you use context? Like, for example, I'm just thinking like if I have a bunch of like 10 things on my low energy context, and how do you decide where to start?
I think so. So what you could do is, remember, you could do low energy, and then you could filter it by projects, right? So you could do only show me low energy tasks related to rad reads projects, right? If you're like still in work mode, right? Or it could be only show me low energy tasks that I could do at home, which could be like lots of like yard work and stuff like that. So the beauty of it is that you could combine any column, right? And just like tweak it, like show me all work things that have flags that are low energy, right? You can just create that. GTD calls them perspectives, or I guess, yeah, GTD calls them perspectives, where you could just like, you could think of them as like super filters. And what GTD would say is kind of like, understand how you work and then create super filters for like every way you work. So like someone might have a like start of day super filter, which would be, like maybe they try to do like eat the frog or do like the most difficult thing, or like 3 high energy tasks related to a project. Like that might be one super filter. Or you could have like super filter like wind down routine, which could be like, stuff that you do with your kids or stuff that you do at home, stuff that's low energy, some permutation of those.
And also, Kay, do you still use OmniFocus?
I do. So I think this is worth talking about capture speed. Again, some people will be new to Notion and they'll be like, "What? You're like talking about another app on top of it?" But here's the analogy that I give. So I'm a surfer. So like if you look here, you see I have 4 surfboards, and they call it the surf quiver. And so there's a surfboard for steep waves. There's a surfboard for tiny waves. There's a surfboard for mushy waves. There's a surfboard for when you are tired, your shoulders are tired. But if you're new to surfing, you only want one board. You want the Rasta board because it's easy to paddle. You can't hurt yourself with it. It floats and all that. So if I've been studying productivity since I was 19 years old, like I want to have a surfboard, a productivity tool for every dimension of my life. And so my stack is like mostly Notion, OmniFocus, and then I'm playing with Roam research a bunch. That's like my stack. But if you're just starting off, just pick one. Pick one. Don't pick Roam as your first one because that's like a short board. But pick one. OmniFocus, Notion, Things, Evernote, doesn't matter. Pick one and start thinking about the system that you're going to use. The system. This is why so many people get so frustrated with productivity, is because they think the tool will solve their problem. That's so wrong. Why has David Allen's book stood the test of time? Because he taught a system that's actually not, you could do GTD on a piece of paper. And so I would say just pick one tool to start. Awesome. I see there's more questions. How about coupling the Eisenhower matrix priorities with GTD? Is there any disadvantages? So the Eisenhower matrix is important, not important, urgent, not urgent. 2x2 matrix. You absolutely can. I played with that for a little while. I found that, using energy states, kind of covered that quite well for me, because like my high energy tasks tend to be important, right? Like paying my cable bill will never be high energy, but like researching, the next cohort of my course is like high energy. So for me, that they tend to fall like skew on those dimensions. But that's the beauty of GTD is like, yeah, you could add that as a tag. You could add an important but not urgent tag, and then filter off of that. So Rodrigo said, actually, Rodrigo, you're there. Yeah. You want to ask a question? Ask it instead of me reading it.
Yeah, I was just, sorry, I don't usually use databases. I found it quite interesting, but I'll try. But I just wanted to see if you could give me just a plain advice. I follow you, especially in the beginning, in how to order the list and how to the capture, organize, review. Essentially, I'm working from home. I work in advertising, but I do writing on my spare time, and I'm thinking it's such a great opportunity to write more. I find them the best hours of my day when I'm more productive, soaked into the work machine. And then by the time I finish, I don't want to see my laptop anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want 8 weeks to go by and then I didn't use it properly to do my writing, because that would be a very, very shame.
Yeah.
So what are basic things? I made a lot of notes about early on, but if you could.
Yeah. Well, so I mean you're getting to an interesting part about, you're talking about habits almost, right? Where like you want to develop a writing practice. You want to, like squat 25 extra pounds, or you want to, increase your running time. You start to get into areas, you can start to get into things that are very hard to like just turn into tasks, period, right?
Mm.
This is outside, this is like, I would actually pull this outside of GTD. I think that we're really now in like the land of habit formation. Like I think like James Clear and Charles Duhigg are two of the OGs of habit formation. But one idea could be something super simple. I actually just wrote about this today, is to just set up a tracker. It's like 3 check boxes. And it's like, did I write? Did I meditate? Did I exercise? And you create a new row every day. Peter Drucker, the famous management theorist, wrote, what gets measured gets managed. Some people have appropriated that quote to say what gets measured gets mastered. He actually didn't say that. But he's onto something, right? If every day you see this list, like, fuck, you don't have to put it in Notion. Just write it on a piece of paper and tape it to your fridge. 3 boxes every day. Write, meditate, exercise.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this shows like sometimes we can get so caught up in the tools and forget that like the most basic thing, right? Like, and the thing about habits, I mean, habits are its own thing, but like okay, what's one habit for me would be like, I don't let myself drink a cup of coffee unless I meditated before. I want that fucking cup of coffee. I will like fight someone for that cup of coffee. Oh, you're making me meditate? Sure, I'll do that. That's actually much easier than fighting someone. So I would think about it in the domain of like habits, habit formation. I mean, that's a whole separate topic, but a simple tracker. I would read James Clear's Atomic Habits. I'll put it in the notes because I wrote a really detailed summary about it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I find that it's just, to me, working from home was a novelty. It was fun, but now it's not a novelty. It's what you have to do. So I find it sometimes even easy to have lunch because you're like, just, yeah, I'll do it after this. And,
Yeah. No,
working from not healthy. Yeah.
Working from home it takes a lot. It really takes a lot of getting used to. And like what's something I do every morning? I'm in a competition with myself where I want to make a bed better than they make it in a hotel. And so, that there's that famous speech by General something at Austin where it's like, make your bed every day, which is basically like you control your intentions, right? And if you set, a chef would call it the mise en place, which is like they lay all their things out. General McCraven, thanks, Charles. They lay out all their bowls and pans and knives and this because, like a clear head, declutter your space, declutter your mind, right? So anyway, that we're veering a little bit off the topic, but I'll definitely put some notes there on habits.
Thank you.
Any other questions? There's one from AB. I wonder if this is Antonia. If it is, hello. If it's not, hello. Okay, my biggest hurdle I face is getting things off my to-do list is task dependency. I start one task and realize that another task in my to-do list needs to be done first. I was creating self-relation. Okay, I'm glad you asked that question because I actually glossed over one of the big parts of GTD that is actually hard to replicate in Notion and easier to replicate in Things 3 or OmniFocus. And that is the sequencing of tasks, or as Antonia says, I think it's Antonia, the path dependency or task dependency, right? So let's take the example of filing your taxes. Gather your W-2s, input them, and apologies to our non-US listeners. Put them into TurboTax. Gather your receipts from the Salvation Army. See, Rodrigo. Email me with any questions. Gather your receipts from the Salvation Army. Input your checking data, and then check that the refund came. 2 weeks after. There's no point in checking if the refund came if you haven't gathered your W-2s. So GTD is quite strict in the clarify and organize phase of making you sequence out your tasks. And what it does, like a good GTD app, like Things or OmniFocus, you can't do this in Notion, to my knowledge, is it basically hides them, right? Like you don't even need to be thinking about TurboTax if you haven't collected your W-2s. And that's why, I mean, if you see the pattern with GTD, it's all about like reducing that mental friction. Like, why should I be thinking about TurboTax if I haven't collected my W-2s? There's no fucking point. And so GTD is all about like minimizing. It's almost like having a super smart assistant that's like I know you shouldn't be thinking about TurboTax, but really like do this thing right now, collect your W-2s. The second you check off collect W-2s, poof, collect receipts from Salvation Army shows up. The second you click that off, poof, log into TurboTax shows up.
Could you build that with an if function? If task done, then kind of like a recall, something.
Maybe the only issue though is that it's hard to preserve the thing is like
You'd have to link tasks to other tasks.
You'd have to
right?
link tasks to other tasks, and Notion doesn't really have variables, right? Like it can't remember the state of a variable. And so I bet someone could figure that out, but if you're going to do that, you should just like if you want that, you should just use another app. Things and OmniFocus I think those apps are incredible. They might actually be a better starting point than Notion if you're like truly focused on task management and less on like information management and those like nebulous parts. Let's see. Charles asked, if you try to think about tasks an hour, then you automatically break them. Sorry, let me read that again. If you try to think about tasks in hour increments, then do you automatically try to break down a project into its smallest components? Yes. I think again, I've like borrowed a lot from Tiago here, where there's momentum to be had in like collecting a win. And so if you look at this task that's like 6 hours, like you can't get that win. And so again, I would like caveat everything by saying that like eventually the cool thing about all of this stuff is eventually it becomes intuitive, right? Like I don't need to do next action because I think about my tasks that way and I don't need to see it, right? Like it's so internal to how I operate that I don't need it to be so precise, right? Like it's almost like take the surfing analogy, right? Like Kelly Slater could surf really well on the shittiest waves. I can't. And so it's because like he's internalized like the subtleties of like all of this. So I think so that it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, Charles, but I do it. I believe that there's like momentum to be had in like scoring that small win. All right. Any other? I got one more AB question, but let me go to the live if anyone has. Cool. I will say that, so one of the issues with Notion, and I was actually working with Notion. I have no relationship with them, just with their help support, is like, you can't share templates that have links in them. So it breaks. So actually, it would be pointless to share this with you anyway because it's so complicated, but I'm trying to think about the best way. I might share the 3 tables with you and then have you guys relink them yourselves by watching the video, but I can't just share this setup because it will just break in the process of sharing it with you. So I'm going to try to play with like the best way for you guys to do that. And AB asks, can we use a daily review tag in GTD to tag? Sure. I mean, you could. I think, you know, for a while I had like take my vitamin in GTD as a recurring task. I think if you're going to do daily tasks, make it a habit. Like if you're doing like 10 daily tasks a day, like you should reconsider if you need to be doing those 10 daily tasks. But if it's something like a daily task, like the point of OmniFocus is to reduce the mental load. Like if having a daily task pop up every day to remind you to take a vitamin, I don't know why that's the example I came up with. If that reduces the mental load for you, by all means do it. When I tried to do that, I just started like clicking, like go away, go away, go away, and then like I stopped taking the vitamin. Like it became counterproductive. So again, it's going to really be a function of like how you move through this world. Awesome. Well, y'all are awesome. Thank you for sitting through this. There's so much more where this came from. I have probably like 15 hours of YouTube videos that are all out there free. I have a thing, like if you ask me a Notion question on Twitter, and as long as you're like not rude, I respond with a video. So ask me questions on Twitter. We've got a Slack group. I see a bunch of our members in the Slack group. I'm not going to put the link there because I do want people to opt into it and not default into it. So if you want to get into the Slack group, just email me and you could just write Slack group and I got you covered. And yeah, and if you, again, like this, just for context, like what we did today is probably like 1.5 lectures of my Notion course. So like you come into the course, you know nothing. It assumes you know nothing. In the first week, you learn kind of all the basic features. It's actually quite easy. The second week, you learn everything about tables. The third week, you learn about databases. And the fourth week, you create like these dashboards to like pull all the data together. And you leave, I call it, like I see Sean and Jay Flynn in my screen right now. So you leave with what I call the Sean HQ or the Jay Flynn HQ, which is basically a task manager, a CRM, a Para setup, and a resource center for everything that you clip using the Notion clipper. And then a dashboard that sits on top of that incorporates reviews and all. The cool thing about review, now I'm digressing, is that you can create a review function on your reading list. Like if you read a great post, like Paul Graham's Do Things That Don't Scale. I love that post. I want to read it every year. I slap a review function on that. And so my reading list resurfaces things to me. Like as the date moves on, it's like, oh, it's been a year since you reviewed Do Things That Don't Scale. Pops it back up to my reading inbox. And so you could put all these things together, and it's awesome. I love teaching it, and it is, and that's just what I think is so cool about it is that you have you learn this overall system, but then you can go use Notion like for your work. You can go use Notion as an entrepreneur. You could use it. A lot of people actually used it to like really like set up like their households, like coordination, like school stuff with their wife and their kids and their personal finances and habits and things like that. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Again, we're living in kind of crazy times right now. I do believe that we will make it through this. Be kind to yourself in this period. Please be kind to others. If you're on this call, you're probably faring much better than the vast majority of the population as it relates to coronavirus. So just please keep that in mind as you as you move through your days and as you interact with other people. And we say, oh, it's Antonio. Cool. Thanks, Antonio. So yeah, you guys are awesome. I'm so glad you're part of the community, and I can't wait for you guys to play with all of this. Have a good day.